Well, good morning and welcome to this June 22nd version of Keystroke Live. I'm David Hunsinger, and I will be talking about keystroke and networks today. Remember, it's the same time, same place, same login information every Wednesday, and first Wednesday is always Michael Gebb. I'm going to talk about keystroke and networks, and I don't pretend to be any kind of network expert or Microsoft certified engineer. I'm a guy who started back with NetWare and Lantastic and Windows for Work Groups, and now here at SBS we run a Windows 2008 server, a Windows 2012. We use Windows 7 as a server and Windows 10, and we also have a network attached storage device. So we kind of do a little bit of everything, so we know what's going on and can dabble, as people call us, with different questions. Really, I'm going to kind of cover a few things, and most of it is I'm just going to talk about how keystroke works with networks, and I'm going to address a lot of questions I hear every day people calling in with, just so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on, what we run into in tech support every day too. And so first off, it's drive mapping versus UNC paths. Keystroke used to be a lot happier with mapped network drives versus UNC paths. Really, that's kind of, we've changed something in Keystroke, so backup works okay, help screens all work okay, everything can pretty much find its way well with UNC paths or drive mapping. Where the benefits are in drive mapping really lie in if you run DOS or standalone utilities, or a lot of times for our tech support, we will take people out to the DOS prompt, and if we can go to the F drive or the K drive, that makes it a lot easier than if it's a UNC path. Then we have to use Windows Explorer to go in there, and if we're deleting our file or something, we kind of teach, we don't like to go to Windows Explorer and say, hey, click on it and hit delete, because we don't know what they're doing. But if you take them out to DOS, you can go to the keystroke directory, the data directory, type in dir user1.tmp, hit enter, it says one file, type in del, hit F3, hit enter, file gets deleted. We know we deleted the right file. We know we didn't accidentally drag and drop anything anywhere. If you're running delete utility or other standalone utilities, KSR for reports or this or that, it's a lot easier to do from a mapped drive than a UNC path. But really, keystrokes changed a lot just in the past 6 months or a year, so that the 7-zip that we use for the backups, it works with UNC paths now, and so it's a lot more friendly with those UNC paths. UNC being Universal Naming Convention. That's like \\server /share /keystroke is the UNC path, versus you may just say k:= \/server /share. Also want to talk about IP addresses. The big question is, do you use static ones or dynamic ones? Not a whole lot of difference as far as keystroke is concerned. I like static just because then I know who is who. I keep a simple spreadsheet saying, here's the name of the computer, here's the IP address, are they accessing the internet, how are they accessing the internet, what gateway are they using, that kind of information, so that I've got all that at my fingertips, and it makes it a lot easier. If you're using the Cayenne Genius, you pretty much want to do static IP addresses, because in keystroke you have to specify what the IP address is of the Genius you are using, and so if you have dynamic IP addresses, it may not change, but you may come in, there may be a day where somehow it forgot its defaults and it's assigning it a different IP address now. And remember, there's the 192.168 range of IP addresses. There's also the 10 dot whatever range of IP addresses. I use the 10 dot just because it's a little bit shorter and simpler for typing them in, and also typically any default router device you get, it's going to have a 192.168 IP address on it, and so I kind of know, okay, this is our world when we're in the 10.1. You know, and the authorities, powers that be, they set up those ranges. I think there's another one, I forget what it is, 174 or something like that. But they set that up because they would run out of IP addresses. If every single person in the world had a unique IP, they would run out. So they did those internal IP address ranges so that the billions of people that are using local networks could have the same IP addresses, and then they use network address translation, you know, via a router to get out to the internet. That's the gateway that you use to get out to the internet. Installing Keystroke on a network is pretty straightforward. You install Keystroke on the server. You can do that on the server. You can also do it from any workstation. Obviously, if you're going to run it on the server, you want to do it from there. But if you, like one of our servers is a network attached storage, so if you want to do that, obviously you don't run Keystroke from it, so you can install it from anywhere. When you install it, it puts another setup program called Setup WS for Setup Workstation in the Keystroke directory, and then you run that from all the workstations to get the proper files registered so that you're looking at the right directories for things and all. We recommend using the client installation, which basically leaves everything on the server, just registers the program files, the EXEs and DLLs, so that Keystroke runs properly on that machine, but it still looks for data and support files like invoices and forms on the server. You can install Keystroke individually on each machine and then use switches to point to all that. The benefit there is if your network goes down, you could run Keystroke from those individual machines. The disadvantage is if you ever update Keystroke, you have to go install it on each of those machines, and if you forget one, it can cause problems with mismatched versions of Keystroke running on a network. That's one of the benefits of that network and client installation, is when there is an update, you can just install it on the server and everybody else is good to go, because everything out on the individual machines is just registry entries. Now, sometimes there's new files to be registered, and so Keystroke might not start up after an installation, or a Windows file changed and it's not registered properly, and you may have to run what we call that Setup WS again, or there's also a little program, RegKash, that you can run that just re-registers the Keystroke program. We used to have a batch file, and we still do, called RegDLLs, but the RegKash is good because it elevates the privileges, and that gets us into this user rights issues, that it elevates the privileges so that it is installing Keystroke as an administrator, and so it's able to change the registry. Now, to run Keystroke, you don't have to be an administrator. You just have to have full read-write access to the Keystroke directory and its subdirectories. To install Keystroke, you need to do that with administrator rights because you are making registry entries or changes to the registry. So just keep those things in mind, and it's something, it happens almost every day. It's been really a problem with Windows 10 because they do a lot of registry and rights restrictions, that we tell people, hey, run Setup WS again. And you could do the RegKash program. It's kind of, it just does the Keystroke program files. The Setup WS is a bigger program. It takes longer. It does more. It checks if you have help files. It'll install non-keystroke files like the data cap files and some Windows controls, so it'll install and register those as well. So it does a little more, but the RegKash is kind of the quick and dirty. It doesn't hurt to run it. A lot of times if you were doing drive mapping and turned it off, or you did drive mapping and didn't have full user rights to it, that you may encounter some problems, and you can run that RegKash and everything gets registered and it's copacetic and runs. I want to briefly mention some Windows features that we always watch out for, and I think to do this, see if I can get in here. I am going to, hopefully this will look okay. I made my fonts bigger. I'm going to share my whole screen so that you can see this. And one thing I want to point out is there is this sync center. I can use my fancy highlighter right here, that you can turn on this. Sometimes it's called shared folder synchronization sync center. You can, on a folder, you can go to it and say, hey, I want to be able to access this folder when I'm offline. Basically, this is bad. It caches files. It causes problems in Keystroke because Windows gets lazy and doesn't go update things on the server. It holds it in its cache and says, oh, I'll go update that later. So if you're looking around, and I'm going to look at my Keystroke directory here, and there's a little icon, it's hard to see, that shows it's shared, but there is this sync and always available offline. And if you see these, basically you want to get these turned off, because this will cause things to be cached, can cause problems in Keystroke because we're accessing transaction files from multiple machines, and if it caches it, it goes to write to it and changes things, and indexes get messed up and all of that. So this is kind of a feature of Windows that doesn't work, probably works great if you're editing Word documents, but for a actively useful transaction-based program, it causes some problems. So you don't want that. I've also this is Windows 7. On my Windows 7 machine, it's called shared folder synchronization, and it's a problem we run into from time to time. There is also, if I go to the user accounts, and I am going to so let's just say manage another account. I'll go here, and then there is the account type. Whether you're standard, if you're installing, making changes, you need to be an administrator. And then there is the and I'm not finding where to go to it, the user account control. But you want to be sure that that user account control is turned all the way down, or else it can interfere and cause a lot of problems there. If I go back to my PowerPoint, there are firewalls, and in the current versions of Keystroke, with the and make sure you're seeing this okay, with the Windows firewalls, the new Keystroke setup programs will make exceptions. When you run Keystroke, it'll make exceptions in the Windows firewall for Keystroke, KeyPay, Keymail. If you're using a different firewall or a third-party AVG, Norton, Avast, if you're using a firewall there, it doesn't go in and make the exceptions there, but it does do it for the Windows firewall. So be sure to watch out. It's something, again, we run into every day here is, hey, let's try that with your firewall turned off. Let's go make an exception and see if it works. And it's happening more and more. Windows 10 is a problem child about this as well. It is good to use firewalls and a hardware firewall if you have them, but just keep in mind and remember that you've got those options there, and Keystroke is trying to do what we can to do that. Also remember, the newer versions of Keystroke do disable older protocols like TLS 1.0 and SSL and things like that. So it doesn't affect Keystroke, but maybe if you're using an old financial program or accessing some information from a vendor over the internet and they use some of those older protocols, it may block it. So I mentioned that just so it triggers in your mind if they're saying, hey, I can't get to this website anymore, that it could have been Keystroke that blocked out those protocols that have been unsecure. They've been not in use and deemed unacceptable for quite a long time. So there shouldn't be a lot of organizations using the older protocols, but be aware we do disable some of those older protocols when you install Keystroke. It's a PCI and PADSS compliancy thing. I also want to talk about routers, and maybe once a month we get a call, hey, this isn't working, this isn't funny, or it's acting funny, the internet's coming in and out, and we find it's either somebody ran over the network cable with a vacuum cleaner, or a rat was chewing on it, or something like that. And then also ports on routers go bad. So sometimes we say, hey, go try switching that from one to another port. Oh, now it works great. Well, yeah, somehow the gateway and the switching on that broke down, and so one port on a router has gone bad. There are also a variety of routers out there that you can do internet backup via cellular with. I know Cisco and Zoom make some so that if your internet goes down, you can plug in or via Wi-Fi connect to this little secondary router that will bridge the internet connection from your network through your cellular phone. So just some things to be aware of on ways of backing up a network and doing those kinds of things. Lastly, I want to talk about the net use command at DOS. It's something that's handy, and if you're having things not working, funny problems, we often just go here as a tech support thing, and it's just, you can type in net use, and it will show you all of your network connections. Like, so I'm using F as SBS1 server, that's a Microsoft Windows network. Remember, anything at DOS, you can always type in net use, and then I can do /?, and it'll tell me different things I can use and the syntax of it. So you can actually, when you open up an administrator command prompt like I have here, you can share, you can map a drive, you can make it, there's a way of making it persistent. You can do /persistent : yes, so that it always does that. And sometimes it looks like it's mapped, but it wasn't mapped with administrator privileges, so you come here and it doesn't see it as mapped. So it's a way of confirming what you have mapped. You can disconnect it. You can do a lot of good things on the network to kind of look and see what's going on. But again, it gets to that, you don't need administrator rights to run Keystroke. You do need it to install it. So when you are running it, be sure you can, again, a good reason to have a mapped drive is I can go to F Keystroke here and then run setup WS, and I know I'm doing it as an administrator because I'm in an administrator command prompt. If you're doing it from Windows Explorer, you got to be sure you can't just click it. You got to right-click it and then select Run as Administrator. And what that looks like, if I go to my Keystroke directory here and find, I went by it, setup WS, here it is. I right-click it, and then I can select Run as Administrator. And then, lastly, on my PowerPoint, I had a quick little look of this is a typical network installation. I know it's kind of small. This is out of our PADSS, where you've got your payment processing server accessing the internet with a firewall in between it. But that payment processing server isn't your data server. Your data is stored on a basically out of scope, not connected to the internet server, so that you've got your workstations able to access the data server, your workstation's able to access the payment processing server, but your payment processing server is the only item with the path to the internet to go out and approve the transactions. So that's a very simplified network installation, but kind of a basic idea on some good ways of handling things with Microsoft is very big, and PCI is very big on one task for each server. So you have a data server, you have a email server, you might have a web payment processing server. They like that. I know that's not practical for a lot of owner-operated businesses, but just some ideas on ways of improving people's functionality and adding value to an installation. So with that, I will open it up to any questions we might have out there. Not that I've got a lot of answers about networks. I'm just trying to expose you to some of the things we hear about in tech support at Keystroke every day. And hopefully you can all still hear me, right, Nick?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
I'm not sure we're all awake, but we can all hear you.
Well, any questions? We've kind of had a running theme this month on tech support issues. We talked about, we get a lot of calls on how I install help. Lynn talked about that. It's up on our YouTube site. Mike Tabor is actually going to come back next week and give you some more about Windows 10, just because we keep learning more as we have people calling in, or as we call it here, Winpocalypse. That all these people are being forced to upgrade and calling us saying, my machine just upgraded to Windows 10, what do I do? And trying to pass on what we've learned to you.
Dave, a question on an unrelated issue. On the ISC 250, I posted to the Yahoo board yesterday 3 questions. Has anyone installed the new RBA 17? If so, how did it go? Has anyone done the Mercury tool update? How did it go? And has anyone shipped any units back RBA 5 to JR's POS depot? Talked to JR's yesterday, and they said from the day they received the unit, it's a 48-hour turnaround, and the cost is just what you told me earlier in the week, approximately $120 plus shipping both ways. I thought I'd get some nibbles on that on the Yahoo board, but it hadn't been a whisper.
Yeah, and I know there's one dealer that did it that we talked about, and haven't heard from them yet. We actually did send an ISC 350 back to JR's to get it updated that had RBA 5 on it. Then we realized it's not approved yet. So so we're not sure what we're going to do with it yet, but they did the ISC 250, and then the IPP, I believe it's the 320 and the IPP 350 are the 3 devices that DataCap has approved right now for EMV.
Yeah, and as a footnote to that, I talked to Molly yesterday, and she said she was trying to work out a rental program on iPads when we have to ship these back to JR, so the customer still got a way to process.
Okay, well, yeah, hopefully the folks at Van have come up with some creative ideas, because you can't leave. It benefits everyone to have a customer continue to process credit cards. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you all for attending today. And again, it's Mike Tabor next week, and have a great rest of the week.